Welcome back to the TwinSpires jury. I'm Ashley Anderson here with Darin Zoccali and Nick Tammaro filling in for James Scully today. We have a little bit of a lighter weekend in racing, a couple graded stakes at Keeneland, and we're going to talk some Belmont at Aqueduct as well as Santa Anita. No Breeders' Cup win in your ends, but some Breeders' Cup implications with these races. So, Nick, I will start things off with you. We're not going to talk any Breeders' Cup prep races with your best bet, but what is your best bet of the week and where are you going to play that?
Yeah, I tried to keep it to something I'll be covering on TwinSpires.com to Santa Anita Saturday afternoon. Race 9 is the featured event on the card. It's the California Dreamin' going, or I'm sorry, California Distaff going 6.5 furlongs down the hill. I like the 7 Stay and Scam. With all due respect to two-time Kentucky Derby winning jockey Mario Gutierrez, I like the rider switch to Umberto Rispoli here. This is a horse that has been in position, maybe moved at the wrong time in some recent starts, including a 5th place finish in the Solana Beach last time out. But she's a perfect 8 for 8 in the money at Santa Anita. She's been victorious down the hill on multiple occasions, including the Irish O'Brien. I think she'll be a decent enough price. We don't have a morning line yet. The race just got drawn yesterday afternoon, so we'll see that pretty shortly. But I think Stay and Scam has the right kind of profile for this race. There is some confirmed speed to the outside. That's no problem. This, of course, is the only trip in racing, American racing, that has a right turn. But I think Stay and Scam will find her way into a good position, and I'm looking forward to seeing how she can fare in the California Distaff Race 9, the nightcap at Santa Anita on Saturday.
Yeah, very good form at Santa Anita. 3 wins, 3 seconds, and 2 thirds from 8 starts, and then 2 for 4 at the distance as well. So haven't looked at a lot of Santa Anita, but I like the look of Stay and Scam. Just quickly looking at the PPs, so I think you're onto something there.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure. She looks like a fun horse.
Darin, what about you? What's your best bet?
Yeah, great card at Keeneland on Saturday. One of the races I took a focus on is race 9 in allowance. There's a couple of races that have favorites that I think are a little bit vulnerable at a short price. And I went back and forth which one I was fading. I have a strong opinion here on a price. So I went with this for my best bet with number 6, Mac Man, who I really thought ran a really good race, coming back off about the 3-month respite last time out, switching over to Churchill Downs, where this horse stalked the pace. Could not quite get by coming down to the wire. He was a monstrous price here, guys. That's going to be him in the pink there on the outside. And he's just going to duel all the way down to the wire and get beat a long head, maybe call it a neck. But I thought this was a really game effort for this horse who came in off of a win at Delaware Park where he was simply much the best that day. But he's going to make the lead right here. Looks like he might be home, and then he's going to get collared just coming down to the wire. But again, kind of switched leads late there. Maybe got a little bit tired going the mile and an eighth. I think the mile and a 16th, the cutback is going to help him with the shorter stretch at Keeneland. But really, it's more of a vote against Como Rubino Omiodia, just as much as it is a vote for MacMan. I think the favorite in here has got a lot of speed to the inside of him, especially his next door neighbor. I think with this short run into the first term, there's a chance that he could get forced wide. Dropping out of a couple of graded stakes races, I think he's going to be overbet because he's facing a really competitive field here. So I went price shopping against a favorite that I'm a little bit dubious about with number 6, MacMan. Love the value at 12-1.
I feel like it's a good chance to play a lot of bigger prices here. I like the 4 as well, King Kumbalai. And you said the morning line favorites name so seamlessly. And I know Nick will be talking about that in our fade section, so I'll hold off on any more analysis and leave that to Nick for our fade of the week. But my best bet is on Friday at Keeneland in the Sycamore. It's a 1.5-mile turf test. And I'm going with number 3, Highway Robber. This is a hard-spun gelding who caught my eye at Ellis Park, winning the Kentucky Downs Turf Cup Preview Stakes at 1 1/8 of a mile. Had a really good closing kick, came from far off the pace, which was not originally the trip that Jareth Ludbury intended. He also picked up the mount kind of at the last minute in that race. Then last out at Kentucky Downs in the Turf Cup, he ended up finishing a half-length second to Grand Sonata. I'm looking for him here with the pace scenario, potentially a hotter pace. We have a couple of runners going to the early lead. Segoy, Tawny Port, Ohana Honor, and Cathkin Peak, I think, will maybe create a hotter pace. So I'm looking for Highway Robber to close late. Had 2 sharp workouts, and Tyler Gaffleone picking up the mount, coming off of Bold Act, the morning line favorite, who really hasn't performed very well in the U.S. for Charlie Appleby. So Bold Act was almost my fade of the week, but instead I'm going with the best bet here with Highway Robber at 9-2.
Look at you,
Tough
value
race.
shopping.
Yeah, I was going to say tough race, Nick. This might
Yeah.
not have been the most fun morning line you've made all meet because you could have gone in probably 3 different directions here, especially after the post draw.
Oh, they're all a walk in the park, Darin. Let me tell you, it's great. It's easy as can be, right? A week out, the night of the draw. Who could beat it?
Let's talk about the horses we're fading at a short price. So, Darin, who is that for you?
Yeah, I'm going to save my Kentucky Downs angle for this one. It's going to come in race number 5 on Saturday, which is a maiden special weight. 2-year-olds going a mile and a 16th over the turf. I'm going to fade Lucky Mischief here. Horses from Kentucky Downs coming into this week, they're just not doing well at Keeneland. I think the stat was something to the effect of 3 for 81. And that's kind of been a common trend where horses coming out of Kentucky Downs going to Keeneland for the past couple of years, with a couple of exceptions. But for the most part, they just don't fare well for whatever reason it is. And the purses at Kentucky Downs continuously going up. The races look awfully good on paper, but the form just doesn't seem to transfer over when those horses head on over to Keeneland. Lucky Mischief is coming off a narrow defeat last time out. I thought this horse had a really, really good trip. Was a bit wide, but rated kindly. I didn't really see an excuse here. I mean, the horse was 9-1 that day, so perhaps you're going to say maybe the other horse was just better. But I just thought Lucky Mischief just kind of hung here. Just, could not get by the leader. I think they could have gone around again. Was never going by the leader. And in this particular race, you have a horse coming in from Saratoga and Maui Strong, who's 15-1 in the morning line. He was chasing a really fast pace, going 5.5, that I think is really interesting. And there's a couple other runners in here as well that I think you can go to. So for me, Lucky Mischief at 5-2, the morning line chalk is my fade.
I'm interested in that first-time starter for Brendan Walsh, number 9, El Muhit, who is damn as by See the Stars. And I think first time out, his sire Warfront is a 14% winner first time on turf. So Brendan Walsh obviously very good at getting, maidens ready on the turf. So that's probably where I'm going to go in this race.
Yeah, I was actually kind of curious to see what happens with Authentic Style, who Authentic doesn't have the greatest numbers yet with turf runners, but there's been a couple to show up that have run well. One of them ran really well up at Saratoga, and they're switching this horse on over to the grass, and there is some damn side turf pedigree in there. So I thought this was a little bit of an interesting move, and Flavian Pratt for Rudy Brissett. This one might escape at a price and have a shot, too.
Just to interject real quick, I mean, it was one of the interesting things about this race, too, that you've got 2 high percentage barns with horses coming off of lackluster races as well. And I know I struggled to make the lines on the 5 and the 1 because Johnny's Rendezvous, the 1 was bet down to 8-5 last time out and really didn't do a heck of a lot of running. He chased and then stopped. You'd have to imagine he could run better. And maybe the Kentucky Downs angle is you're supposed to be critical of the horses that maybe were either with the profile or excuse the ones that didn't run as well. So I'd be giving him another shot. And then you've got Blue Chair Bay similarly for Brad Cox second time out. And I maybe made this one too short a price at 7-2, but I'm not going to get caught making Brad Cox horses big prices. That seems like a fool's errand. So fun race. I'm glad we talked about it a little bit. One of the more wide open races I think you'll see on the whole card.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would ever blame you for making a Brad Cox horse a short price. You don't want to make the horse 15-1 and have him go up 9-5.
No, I'd like to avoid that.
Let's talk about that 9-5 morning line that you gave number 11. You can say it better than me.
Morabino Omoide.
Yes.
Yeah, see, he's my fade for the weekend. This is a horse that, quite honestly, I wasn't sure. I'm still a little torn as to how much the public is going to go in on this horse because, I mean, if I'm talking about him as a fade and if we're looking at alternatives, Darin mentioned there's a good bit of speed in there. Parchment Party is also a horse that's going to take a ton of money coming back from a layoff. He was a really flashy 2-year-old that I know was on some people's endless supply of Derby lists as we came into 2024. So he's going to get a lot of action off the bench, first-time Lasix. This is a Robertino Diodoro trainee that has run some big races this year. He's run some speed figures that were just through the roof, and he comes in with graded stakes for him in his last 2 starts, having run in the West Virginia Governors. That was won by Hit Show, who, of course, came right back and won the Lucas Classic, and then 1 start later, he ran 3rd in the Charlestown Classic behind Skippy Longstocking. So, this is a horse that's run in some good spots. He's got a lot of speed. He has an outside draw that he'll have to overcome, but a bit of an interesting situation, I think, and one where you want to take a stand against him. I don't want him at 9-5. I don't really want him at 5-2 either. I'd want to be a little bit more critical of him and try and find a horse that's going to offer some value. So my fade, Komorabino Omoide, the Japanese bred from the barn of Robertino Diodoro.
Very well done. We also have, and also eligible here, Creative Minister. Wasn't that a big, favorite for you, Darin, back when he was in the Triple Crown? I feel like a lot of people like this horse.
I feel like I picked him in the Preakness Stakes when he ran in it, probably. That was a good selection.
Yeah, everyone was on that horse, and then he just never really panned out, it felt like. But Oh well,
Yeah,
maybe you'll
he
get
was
to
good.
this field.
I bet him in the Belmont, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
he
he was
felt like
fifth
a
in
horse
that,
that would.
right?
Maybe it was the
Yeah.
Belmont. I bet him then. I don't remember, but I definitely had him in one of the two for sure.
Yeah. So for my fade, I have a Brad Cox runner who's a very short price. Thanks to Nick at 6-5. This is Giant Mischief in race 6 at Keeneland on Saturday, a 6.5 furlong allowance optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up. Started the late pick 5. And this is a horse coming off a very long layoff, almost 10-month layoff. And last year we saw this horse in the Malibu, and his final start was third by about 4 lengths in that race, racing 7 furlongs, and raced 7 furlongs in his last 2, trying 6.5 for the first time here. Now, certainly a good horse. Brad Cox is, I think, the leading trainer at the moment for the Keeneland meet, and certainly can get horses ready off a long layoff. But looking at the speed in this field, and this is a late runner, I don't know that we're going to have the hottest pace. And then I see a couple other late runners with better closing kicks, and also obviously more recent form, having Cyclone Mischief to his outside, had a 100 brisk net speed figure 2 back and a 6 furlong allowance optional claimer. Has Corey Lannery aboard, who's doing really well at Keeneland, and a couple others who I just feel like had better class ratings recently and better late pace ratings. So I just don't like Giant Mischief off this long layoff, and I'm going to play against at such a short price for a horse that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, Nick, this race fascinated me from a pace standpoint because there's really just not a lot of it in here. And Giant Mischief is coming out of races, one race at Southern California, prompted a couple of pretty quick paces at Churchill. But, I mean, you can't call him a speed horse based on what you've seen. But based on the rest of the field, he might inherit the lead here, believe it or not, because he might be quicker than some of them. If I were Jareth Ludbury on Lofty Adjudicator, I'd be all out firing to the front here and just try to steal this race. But that would be my angle trying to play against the favorite. But I had a really hard time making any sense of the pace scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a difficult horse to gauge pace wise because I think he kind of got sucked into the pace in his last few starts because it was so slow, and that Malibu pace was very slow for that caliber of competition, and how fast that track was. So yeah, he's a little. He's gonna be pounded at the windows, no doubt about it. Coming back off the layoff with all that stakes form and good local efforts, and of course he beat Arabian Lion in his second career start on Breeders' Cup weekend back in 2022. So this was a really highly regarded colt that's now looking to get things started again. Interesting spot and another fun race Saturday afternoon in Lexington.
Yeah, I was looking at the 1-2 as potentially maybe trying to go for the early lead with Jose Ortiz. I mean, hasn't gotten the lead in several starts, but did get a win way back in January, going gate to wire, but a little bit slower fractions too. But super sharp workout.
Wasn't he on the lead in a couple of the Arkansas Derby prep races, like early in the season as a 3-year-old? Granted, those were 2 turns, I think.
He was on the lead in the Southwest, won by Newgrange. He was close to the lead in the Rebel, won by Unoho as well. So yeah, he had a little speed back in the day, and this is a new iteration of him, but a horse that still has some ability. And again, I mean, the same way we're figuring out that there's no speed in here and somebody needs to take advantage, I imagine the riders are going to do the same thing. So at the very least, I'd expect Giant Mischief to be within range, but it's obviously not the most favorable scenario for a horse that's going to go off, probably right around even money.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about promos and tournaments we have going on at TwinSpires before we get into what else we're watching for the weekend. So, Darin, what do we have going on?
Yeah, a lot happening. Talking about the late pick 5 that starts with this race 6 that we were just discussing. Every day at Churchill, but not quite at Churchill yet. Every day at Keeneland, we have a $2,500 late pick 5, hit it and split it, covers the late pick 5 sequence. That goes on every single day of the Keeneland meet. So if you're lucky enough to cash a ticket, you're going to be sharing in that $2,500 so long as you're opted in. And again, that takes place each and every day of the Keeneland meet. And we have a fun promotion for the international players. The Everest is coming up, that series of races, and the huge purses down there in Australia. So our partners at Sky Racing have joined with us to offer a $10 money back on the Friday nights leading up to the Everest. And that's always a fun promotion. So if you're into international racing, especially in Australia, you've got a money back on the Friday nights on the Australia cards right with us at TwinSpires. So that's a little bit of a added incentive to play some of the international cards. Tournaments, obviously all the rage right now. We're really excited about what's transpiring. On Saturday, Keeneland has one of their big tournaments. It's the $3,500 Keeneland Fall Challenge, and TwinSpires is very happy to be a participating ADW in that tournament. There's a feeder contest tomorrow for $1,000. One entry for every 7 people that play in that contest will be awarded for this $3,500 event at Keeneland. And you can also buy into this contest if you don't win your way in and play the contest with us at TwinSpires as well. So we're really happy to be partnering with Keeneland in their fall challenge. And of course, the KDBC has been announced, the Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge. The feeders get underway starting this weekend. And the first one, you're not going to get a much better tournament proposition than this, guys. It's a feeder contest for the KDBC BCBC qualifier on October the 27th. $150 registration fee, $100 to your bankroll, $50 to the prize pool. It's going to take place at Charlestown Saturday night. They have their West Virginia Breeders' Classic night, a huge night of racing, and we've partnered with Charlestown to add $5,000 to the cash prize pool on top of the seats being awarded to the qualifier. So the top 5 players are going to share in $5,000 plus whatever prize money is generated from the prize pool on top of the seats being awarded. Can't really do much better than that from a tournament standpoint. It's the first of 15 feeder contests leading up to that great Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge, Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier, which is probably your last chance qualifier on October the 27th, opening day at Churchill Downs. So be sure to go to TwinSpires.com, go to the tournament page. We got a lot of great stuff. Harness fans, we're starting harness tournaments next week on Monday as well. So lots to get involved with. Really happy to be firing on all cylinders in the tournament world, Ashley.
Very exciting. A lot going on at Keeneland specifically and Charlestown, as you mentioned. But we're going to turn it over to Belmont and Aqueduct with Nick. What else are you watching for this weekend?
Yeah, so I didn't want to double up on the race. Darin's going to talk about it in a minute, so figured we'd get a look elsewhere. I went to the Floral Park. It's race 7 at Belmont at the Big A on Saturday afternoon. It's a turf sprint for older fillies and mares, and it's a race where I actually considered making Risk Threshold my fade, but I wanted to talk about. I wanted to pronounce Komora Bino Omoide as much as I possibly. So that was ultimately why I went there. But all kidding aside, Risk Threshold is an Irish bred filly who's won 2 straight, both at Aqueduct, both during Belmont at the Big A meets. But they've been against Maiden and Allowance Company, and now she's stepping up into Stakes Company. I think what stopped me from going all in against her is she really is the lone speed on paper. I don't like 4-year-old up and up female horses coming off Lasix. I think it's generally had a deleterious effect on their performance, and I'm not banking on her getting such a sweet trip. I also thought she was along the rail last time out during a period of time early in this meet where it was really advantageous to save ground. So I thought she was a horse worth taking a little bit of a swing against. So I'm looking forward to maybe trying some of the alternatives. Loon Cry and Secret Money definitely look like real possibilities, both coming in from out of town. So fun race, and I think a good part of the back end of the card on Saturday afternoon at Belmont at the Big A that should be really good. Darin's going to have you all taken care of right here on TwinSpires with Belmont at the Big A expert picks.
Hopefully, I don't have a deleterious effect on people's wagering. That is a great.
I do it all the time, but yeah,
that is a great word. Love it. Yeah, I'm going to focus, in addition to obviously expert picks, on Belmont at Aqueduct. We have to talk about the QE2 coming up on Saturday for the 3-year-old fillies, $750,000. What a contentious field this drew. She feels pretty. She's about a length and a quarter away from being 6 for 6 in her career. She's never been beaten by more than 3/4 of a length. Couple of recent hard luck losses, but obviously she continues to be in excellent form. I guess you could say that her 3-year-old season so far has been somewhat disappointing because she's gotten beat a couple of times, and I think people expected her going into the Breeders' Cup last year to be a budding superstar, and she's right at the top of the class, the head of the class, to say the least, but I don't necessarily know if she's taken that huge step forward from age 2 to age 3. She's going to be dealing with a horse in here by the name of Soprano. Now, Soprano is coming in from overseas, and she has been facing some of the best fillies in overseas, coming out of a Group 1 at Leopardstown, where she was beaten a length and a half by Porta Fortuna. She's got a lot of good runs in her. She's a mile. I'm curious to see what they do with her here. If she runs well here, it wouldn't shock me at all to see her show up in the Breeders' Cup Mile, because she seems to be the quintessential miler, that type of a profile, maybe a Six Perfections type. And on the outside, you have another invader from France in Candala. Florent Giroux is going to be getting aboard. She's been knocking heads with some extremely tough 3-year-old fillies overseas. She's more of a distance runner and one that could potentially be using this race to springboard to the filly and mare turf. So there's definitely some Breeders' Cup implications. There's a couple of good other American runners in here, but on paper and visually from what I've seen from the Euros, you think the race runs through one of those 3, but it really is a very compelling edition of the QE2 Challenge Cup.
I'm excited to see Caitlin her greatness too. Won the Kings plate, obviously on all weather, but has one turf start and won at 7.5 furlongs, but certainly can handle longer distances as well. So I don't know what to expect with her coming over here to Keeneland for Kevin. It's hard, but getting Frankie Dettori aboard, so that's always a good thing on turf. But you're probably right with the European shippers. I think Soprano looks pretty good, and class rating wise just has way higher numbers compared to the rest of the field. So that probably is the more likely, but I'll be rooting for Caitlin her greatness at least.
Yeah, and Caitlin, her greatness. I mean, Moira has turned into a very nice older filly mare, and she's run extremely well. Caitlin, her greatness in age 3. I think this is a very stern test for her and a big step up in class. And remains to be seen if she can rise to the occasion. Moira has done so over time, for sure. She wasn't up to this level as a 3-year-old, but she has gotten better in terms of the open ranks. But yeah, I mean, look, this time of the year when the European invaders show up, they're usually pretty tough, but it's going to make for a very interesting race.
And I will take it over to Keeneland on Sunday for the Grade 2 Franklin Stakes. And this is a very talented field of 12 fillies and mares, plus we have 4 also eligibles. And Star of Mystery, 3-2 on the morning line. This will be the first time that she is facing all females. This is the first start of the season where she's facing all females. She beat the boys in the quick call last out at Saratoga, and she's coming off a more than 3-month layoff. She's one of 5 3-year-olds in the field, but we do have a couple of good older horses here. Roses for Deborah. We saw her win in the spring at Keeneland in the Giants Causeway, and her stablemate, Don't Look Back at All, is going to be a decent price with Tyler Gaffalione aboard, won the Caress, a Grade 3 2-back. So I don't think it's that clear cut for Star of Mystery, but obviously this horse has been beating up on males, not just females, in her last 6 starts. So I certainly expect her to be a very short price, but I think it's still a chance to maybe try to take a shot somewhere else here with her going up against some older sprinters. I think I maybe would go Roses for Deborah if I'm going to play against, but going to be fun to see what she does, facing older and all female horses. Let's just see if she is that much better compared to the rest of the pack.
Yeah, the interesting thing about her, and I had a heart palpitation when I saw 3-1 when the entries came up, because I thought maybe I sent in the wrong price to Keeneland, but it is 3-2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, you said it right. You said it exactly right. No issue. And I'm not calling anybody out for the graphic being wrong. That is not my intention
I didn't make the graphic
whatsoever. But she passed a couple of opportunities where you may have seen her late in Saratoga. So I don't think this little break was by design. But with that said, look, her 2 races so far in America have been really, really good. I mean, losing a photo for second to Arzak when she had a little bit of trouble along the way as well is a pretty strong performance, 3+ lengths behind Cogburn. So she should be pretty tough to handle. I can't quite figure out the Roses for Deborah. Future is now matchup, and ultimately I made Future is now a shorter price than Roses for Deborah. I made Roses for Deborah too big a price when she won the Giants Causeway, so I figured, why the heck, let's just do it again. But she's not been that good this year. That's my whole thing, is that maybe she finally figured it out last time out in the Presque Isle Masters. You look at Pandora's Gift, who was second in there, was really not much horse. She ran her down in what was at least a performance that maybe makes you hope she is returning to her best. Because her best was very, very good. So I agree. Really fun race. Looking forward to seeing this on Sunday afternoon. No doubt about it.
I'm glad we've had Nick on as the odds maker at Keeneland, because I mean, I could tell you during my time when I was odds maker at the Meadowlands, I don't think people realize how much you really rack your brain out of trying to get this as right as possible. And Keeneland is one of the more impossible places to make a morning line, to say the least, because it's not a long meet. You have horses coming from everywhere. When I did it at the Meadowlands, you had the benefit, once the season got rolling, you saw the horses over and over and over again, and you could pick up the betting patterns and the betting trends, and you could figure things out. When horses come into Keeneland, they're coming from Saratoga, they're coming from Churchill, they're coming from Kentucky Downs, they're coming from Woodbine. I mean, it is hard to figure out which direction the betting public is going to go. And it's great insight to have Nick. You hear the stress of the job. It is something that it's like a crossword puzzle that you feel like you have to get right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I've told people as well, I feel like a referee in the sense that when you're not going to get any attention when things are going well, but boy, when things are bad, you're going to hear about how awful you are. So nobody ever said, boy, the refs did a hell of a job tonight, right? But so yeah, you're trying to stay out of the way, stay out of the conversation.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule, Nick, to come on the jury and talk about all of your thought process with the morning lines and your best bets and fades. So always fun to have you here for the TwinSpires jury. We'll be back next week with more best bets and fades. And then check out our social channels on Saturday because James Scully and Abby Huffman at Keeneland on site to cover the card with the QE2 Challenge Cup. So definitely be on the lookout for that as well. And happy betting. Best of luck. We'll see you next time.